The following is a production of Dan Perkins Media.
Dan Perkins Media presents a unique and exciting program. Truth Starts Now, a conversation with Dan Perkins. The left has taken away your rights to freedom of speech. Truth Starts Now is a platform for you to regain your voice. America and Americans will be better off if we can have civil and respectful conversations about the day's important issues. Now, here's your host, Dan Perkins.
Is a word salad an alternative to saying early onset dementia? I understand that my suggestion of the possibility of young onset dementia of the vice president may be unsettling. The Mayo Clinic reports about 110 of every 100,000 adults between the ages of 30 and 64 have young onset Alzheimer's. In their book, Understanding Young Onset Dementia, the authors Devoit and Carter report, based on few existing studies, the prevalence of dementia at a younger age, under 65, can be estimated to be between 68.2 and 85.5 people per 100,000, although these numbers will vary within countries around the world. According to the Alzheimer's Association, in both groups under 65 and over 65, the percentage of people that have dementia is very close. I've done a great deal of research on the symptoms of young onset dementia. Osaka American Pharmaceutical has compiled a report of symptoms of young onset. It should be noted that people are different, and not all symptoms will be experienced by all people. The three major categories are verbal aggression, physical aggression, and restlessness. I have no knowledge of activities in the second and third categories as they relate to the premise of this article and the vice president. However, I am aware of many stories in the media about her behavior dealing with verbal aggression. The following are titles of published stories that illustrate the vice president's behavior, and I believe they should be read by all of us. Regardless of whether you believe this story or not, do your own homework. The first is an article from Politico that says, "Not a healthy environment. Kamala Harris office rife with dissent. Aides and administration officials say the vice president's office is dysfunctional and it emanates from the top." The Business Insider said a former Kamala Harris staffer says that aides must endure a constant amount of soul destroying criticism. The Daily Express says Kamala Harris labeled soul destroying bully by a former staff due to toxic behavior. And finally, the Boston Times, former staffer of the Vice President Kamala Harris, have come forward with allegation that she is a bully who frequently berates her employees in degrading tirades, leaving them in tears. The accusations were made by author Charlie Springer for the UK Daily Mail and reveal an astonishing 92% staff turnover rate for Harris during her first year in office. All of the above and many more that I don't have room for are examples of behavior you would find with someone who might be suffering from young onset dementia. It is important to consider the possibility from different perspectives, one that takes into account the potential health issues of a public figure. Harris exhibits two other symptoms of young onset dementia. First is her laugh, or what is commonly referred to as her cackle. Laughing is at an inappropriate time is another sign of young onset dementia. We have seen her cackle on many occasions, and sometimes you have to wonder why she's doing this. The second symptom is the odd movement of hands to the face. Go look at the split screen of the debate with Donald Trump and look at the unusual gestures with her hands to her face. Moving on, Harris's first solo interview proves candidate is unprepared for office, says online critics. I have included a link to the interview that Mrs. Harris did with Brian Tufts last week. The interview lasted just over 11 minutes, and Brian asked the vice president, quote, "What will you do to reduce prices and make life more affordable for Americans today?" She spoke for 11 minutes and didn't have anything to recommend that she could bring down prices and make life in America more affordable today. She is not dealing with the reality in her recommendations. She said she wanted to give people a $50,000 tax credit to start a business. You must have taxable income in order to use the tax credit. According to the SBA, most businesses don't make any profit in their first year of business. In fact, most new businesses need 18 to 24 months to reach profitability. And then there's the reality that 25% of new businesses fail in the first year, according to the SBA. How are you supposed to pay for groceries if you have to wait 2 years? Her 11-minute answer needed to be more responsive to Brian's question. He was looking for answers to what she will do today to fix the problem. Her answers could have been more responsive and was more like an 11-minute word salad that was not in touch with the reality of millions of Americans suffering and can't wait years for a solution. I suggest you read the articles noted and watch the interview, and then ask yourself if the Democratic candidate for president is not doing interviews because the staff is hiding her, much like she did in hiding Biden and his dementia from the American people. One last thought. Harris wants to increase the child tax credit to $6,000. Like a small business tax credit, you have to have the money to buy the things you need for your child first year and then file a return to get reimbursed with the credit. Because she doesn't seem to deal with the reality, perhaps the American people should demand Harris take a memory test before the election. Both proposals show that our vice president has never run for business and never raised children, and she's making plans that are unrealistic.
That sound of the emergency squad happens 34 times per hour, 24/7 in the United States, carrying someone who is dying from a drug overdose to the ER. 70% of these runs are people are dying from the vicious drug called fentanyl. Over the last 10 years, 1 million Americans have died from fentanyl. In 2019, 112,000 children ages 12 and 13 were on opioids. The fentanyl overdose rates are rising 2.5 times faster than that of heroin. Now there is an FDA-approved test for the presence of fentanyl in the system. The test is safe, simple, and 99.5% accurate. In just 5 minutes, you can find out if your child, loved one, or employee is using fentanyl. If you want to save someone's life, go to thefentanyltest.com and learn more about this dangerous drug and how you can get your 5-minute test and keep your child out of that squad.
Thanks for listening to the show today. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to send a comment, please do so by sending it to Dan at danperkinsmedia.org. That's Dan at danperkinsmedia.org. And thanks for listening.